Hello everyone, welcome to my skill set presentation on resiliency. In this session we're going to be talking about resilience, which is the ability to withstand, recover, and or grow in the face of stressors and challenges. So why does resiliency matter? Well, using resilience skills can lead to positive outcomes. Resilient people typically have stronger performance and better health outcomes. They perform better in a range of different activities like decision-making, academic achievement, creativity. Resilient people also have lower blood pressure. They typically get to sleep better. They have a healthier immune system and even live longer. So who am I and how do I know about all this stuff? Well, my name is Joey Barrios. I was a technical sergeant in the United States Air Force, and most of my time I spent in the military as a behavioral health technician. I earned an Associate's of Mental Health Services, was a crisis response team member both locally in San Antonio and on the national level, had several deployments under my belt in emergency response, and was trained by the DoD not only to provide resiliency training, but also to provide trained instructors for resiliency training. So a lot of training going on in the military. The good news is this stuff can be taught as well. Resiliency is a skill that can be practiced, and it's about focusing on positive coping skills and increasing self-regulation. We want to learn new skills, practice those skills, and in the practice of those coping skills is where resilience lies. So before we get into discussing resiliency as a whole, I'd ask that you as a viewer take a brief self-assessment and ask yourself which of these two mindsets you fall under. A growth mindset tends to be open to new information and new approaches and feedback. They embrace challenges and feel like they can develop their skill sets, they can develop their emotional intelligence, they can develop their talents, and they see work in these fields as efforts as a path to success. People with a fixed mindset typically tend to be in a static thought process. They avoid challenges because they don't really see any effort being fruitful, and they don't receive feedback or new information very well. Having a growth mindset is sort of critical to learn about resilience skills. So let's talk about negative and positive spirals of emotions. Negative spirals of emotions typically tend to happen a lot easier than positive spiral of emotions. Negative spirals of emotions start with just one negative thought that tends to spiral and snowball out of control. This can be something as simple as, I don't like the way my hair looks, or I don't like the way that person responded in a text to me, and it just can go from there. Positive spirals of emotions are a lot more difficult to cultivate, but they increase our positive emotional responses and they help us sort of build skills and resources to find the good in future events. So now that we understand a little bit about resilience, I'm going to talk about the foundations for resilience. And this is based in 4 different pillars: mental, physical, social, and spiritual. In a comprehensive approach, all the skills that can be taught through learning resilience in courses like the ones I've taught in the past can help improve all of these areas of people's lives. However, it is a skill set that, again, needs to be practiced. There's a broad toolkit that can be applied to all of these skill sets, but because of time, I'm going to focus on just 2 of them. The first being in the awareness realm, and we're going to learn about a skill called ABC. The goal of ABC is to be aware of how your brain drives reactions to actual events. It's an important foundation skill that we learn through resilience training. It's about being aware of how you react and then gain greater control of your thoughts and reactions to help improve the situation. We want to work towards our personal and professional goals in that manner, act based on our values, and so it helps interpret our thought process to help strengthen our relationships and improve our performance. It's about slowing down and thinking about what we think about. No one ever tells you to stop and think about your thoughts, but we can use ABC in the moment of thought to help adjust reactions. And what do I mean by that? Let's talk about the ABC model really quick, which can be broken down into activating event, the beliefs and thoughts about those events, and the consequences that stem from those beliefs. The ABC model illustrates how people arrive at certain mental destinations or emotional states. And we can actually define a couple of things first. So let's talk about an activating event. It's any event that you may react to. It could be positive, like getting a promotion or graduating, or even negative, receiving bad news or like getting a flat tire or something. The B is your brain's interpretation of that event, what you believe or think about the event. And the consequences are the tangible ways we react to those beliefs. In this case, we are going to focus on your reactions, both your emotions and physical reactions, which lead to behaviors. So how we interpret the events in our brain play a critical role in how we react to a situation. And our reactions are the results of our beliefs and thoughts about the activating event, not the actual event itself. So let's talk a little bit about that. When an event happens, first we need to slow down, because there are times that we need to slow down the process of thinking and analyze how our brain is driving these reactions. Describe the activating event, and I want you to be specific. For example, an activating event can be something as simple as not hearing back from someone you care about or a loved one via text. So let's talk about the A. That would be the activating event. It's objective. It's straightforward. It's specific. You haven't gotten a text response. Now let's discuss your brain's response in interpretation and those consequences. The belief is maybe they're busy. Maybe they're tired of hearing from me. Maybe they're hurt or something happened. But it's not necessarily rooted in facts, which brings us to the consequences, which are your emotional responses. Your emotional responses can be anxiety, fear, panic, sadness, or anything. They manifest in physical reactions such as elevated heart rate, sweating, increased blood pressure, stuff like that. So when can we use this skill of ABC? Well, using ABC is you use it when you need to understand why you reacted to an event in a certain way. If you feel like your reaction doesn't make any sense to you, take a moment to slow things down and assess what's going on in your brain. That might explain why you had the reaction. So we can use ABC when we don't think our reactions were helpful. If your reactions interfere with your performance, your values, or your goal, impact your friendships and your relationships, you can also slow down and adjust. By slowing down and thinking about why A led to B led to C, we also use ABC to change our actual reactions. But how do we use that? Again, we're going to describe the event. We're going to be very specific. We're going to record our brain's interpretation and list its consequences. How did I feel about this emotionally? How did I physically respond to it? And what did I do because of that? Then ask yourself, did my reactions interfere with my performance, my goals, my values, or my relationships? Now, I'm barely scratching the surface of all of these skill sets that can be taught. So one of the things I want to discuss next is a skill set called balance your thinking. Balance your thinking is a skill set that can help you to perceive situations accurately and then take action to ensure your actions are productive in both your health and wellness. So think of that it builds on the ABC model. Sometimes it's not enough for us to examine the connections between our beliefs and the consequences. Other times we may need to ask more questions to determine if our reactions are even productive. So our thinking is a skill to ensure that we perceive situations accurately. So the whole goal is to attack every unbalanced thought quickly to reduce anxiety and focus on tasks. So how do we do this? We want to use balanced thinking to question and dispute thoughts. Instantly balancing our thinking can be used in moments of pressure or stress to help deflect doubt, negative thinking, and even pessimism. It's about being in the moment and being cognitive of our thoughts. One of the ways we combat unbalanced thoughts is to be aware of what are called cognitive traps. Cognitive traps are usually common patterns of unbalanced thinking that interfere with accuracy. It's usually like jumping to conclusions without any evidence, and we all use this. We all get stuck in them. Sometimes we don't fully consider all the evidence, and we make inaccurate judgments about an event. Our beliefs interfere with our ability to accurately assess a situation. They tint things. They change our perspective. Cognitive traps are common patterns for these unbalanced thoughts. So the whole goal of this balanced thinking is to help to avoid these cognitive traps so that we can perceive situations accurately. So let's discuss some of the most common cognitive traps. First, we'll talk about all or nothing. All or nothing beliefs are generally characterized by absolute terms. These are like always, never, and forever. To quote Star Wars, only a Sith deals in absolutes.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
Sorry, I had to geek out there for a second, but at least I know you're still listening. Okay, let's get back into this. But it can also be thinking of things as only good or bad or perfect or terrible. It's generally one side of the pendulum or the other. But few things in life are actually ever so absolute, and there is a lot of gray area because humans are very nuanced. Examples of this type of thing would be saying, I must be perfect at all times or else I'll be a failure, or nothing ever works out for me. This type of all or nothing belief tends to lead to disappointment. Let's talk about confirmation bias. This is where we're attracted to information that confirms what we already believe and ignore any evidence that doesn't fit into it. So this information confirms what we think we know. We search for that information, we interpret it, and we change it away so that it confirms our existing beliefs and thoughts, disregarding any information that can be helpful to us. Let's talk about blaming others. Blaming others is when we focus only on other people as the source of our negative feelings or the cause of negative events. So, how many times have you fought with your friend or blamed somebody in a fight? Is it possible that you may have contributed to this disagreement as well? What sort of external factors influenced the fight? For example, did you both have like a really bad day and then you somehow came to blows in a discussion later on? How have you approached this problem, and what role did you play in the negative outcome? Let's talk about blaming yourself. Blaming yourself typically is the other way around. You only blame yourself for negative events and not see the contributions of others. It's about taking a self-assessment and understanding your role in the situation, both good and bad. Last is mind reading. And this can come in two different forms. The first is assuming that you know what the other person is thinking, and the second is expecting other people to know exactly what you're thinking. Mind reading is something that we're all guilty of from time to time. One of the most common places that this happens is in relationships, when you get into patterns of assuming that you know what the other person's thinking and being around the other person so long that you assume they know what you're thinking. So how do we avoid these cognitive traps? When we find ourselves using unbalanced thinking, we can try 3 strategies to get out of this. First, let's start by examining the evidence. Is there any evidence to support this thought process? Is there any evidence to disprove this thought? If you have tangible evidence that can make your argument stronger for what you're feeling, then use that. The next step is to check for a double standard. Would you judge other people harshly if they did the exact same thing? So for example, you're playing a game of basketball with your friends and someone keeps missing shots. Would you blame him or her for the entire loss of the game? The third skill to balancing our thoughts can be phone a friend or asking. And it's key to ask somebody that you actually trust. Ask them, what do you think about this situation? Find out if this person that you would trust agrees with you. And this person should be somebody who is unbiased. Talking to an unbiased friend or family can help you see the argument more accurately and acknowledge your potential contribution to the problem. So this doesn't work if you ask a friend who always agrees with you or just fuels the fire and never helps you put anything out. Let's talk about balancing our thinking and when to use it. When your brain is driving reactions that interfere with your goals, your performance, or your relationships, basically when things get out of balance or you're stuck in a cognitive trap that prevents you from seeing anything accurately, this is probably a good time to balance your thoughts. Again, balancing our thoughts can be as simple and easy to use as selecting the belief that interfered with our ability to accurately assess the situation. What is that belief? Examine the evidence, check for a double standard, and ask somebody for their opinion. Finally, do you need to revise your thoughts based on this new evidence? As a basic overview of the toolkit that is used in resilience training, again, based on time, I don't have enough to show everything, but we've discussed ABC and balance your thinking. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for listening to my presentation about resiliency. These skill sets are intended to increase and strengthen the 4 pillars of resilience, which lead to a whole person concept. It's a holistic approach to just being a stronger individual as a whole. For more information about this topic, resiliency, and the way the military has used resiliency, you can visit the following websites or contact me directly.